April is here and it's time to talk about the king. Nope, not that king. No, not that king. Definitely not that king. Yes, that king. Being featured as the main antagonist in King of the Monsters, alongside other classic titans like Rodan, Mothra, and of course, Godzilla. We see the destruction this three-headed monster causes, but is it going to be the most powerful version? Today we're going to discuss what we know about the upcoming version of Monster Zero and how it compares to the one we've seen throughout the Godzilla series. Let's not waste any more time. I'm Alistair, and welcome to DangerVille. We've obviously seen the power of King Ghidorah in the past, ranging massively in how much strength and abilities this creature has. But to understand if the MonsterVerse Ghidorah is the most powerful, we have to first look at the monster's history. In the Showa series, Ghidorah was an alien that first appeared in the 1964 film Ghidorah the Three-Headed Monster. This iteration of the King of Terror completely eradicated the planet of Venus, which 5,000 years ago once housed a thriving civilization of advanced beings, and a thriving, lush ecosystem, leaving it a desolate wasteland almost completely, effortlessly. One of his powers include causing extreme gale force winds, that is a result of him thrashing his enormous wings. He can do this while standing on two legs or whilst flying over cities. Ghidorah would have to produce over 64 knots of wind to give the effect we see in the movies. This is the equivalent to that of a hurricane, and stands at 12 on the Ghidorah Scale, the highest level on the system. Though due to the fact Ghidorah can push even Godzilla over with the force of wind, most likely means it adds an entirely new layer to the system, which is used to measure the intensity of global winds. Another of Ghidorah's power is the gravity beams, sometimes incorrectly called lightning beams by viewers. This signature ability has had many different variations throughout the years, ranging from powerful to not so powerful. Ghidorah's aimed attack, which projects out of each of his heads, used energized gravity to crush and expand the target, which causes mass destruction. He can decimate cities and seriously hurt other kaiju. Outside of that, Showa Ghidorah has size on his side, as he is incredibly bulky, standing at 100 meters tall with an 150 meter wingspan and weighing 30,000 tons, outsizing even the King of the Monsters, which stood at a mere 50 meters tall throughout the 60s and early 70s. This comes into Ghidorah's advantage as he's able to withstand the force of several monsters, and is able to throw smaller monsters around like children. He can withstand conventional weaponry with no noticeable effect, and can even shrug off point-blank blasts from Godzilla's atomic breath. Even with this bulk, Showa Ghidorah could fly at Mach 3 in Earth's atmosphere, and flies even faster in space, by encasing himself within a meteorite that he uses to travel from planet to planet. All this taken into consideration leaves Ghidorah as an extremely formidable foe, with an entire roster of monsters needed in order to take him down in Destroy All Monsters. This, as well as the fact that he destroyed an entire civilization on Venus, signifies that he's definitely not one to mess with. For the sake of comparison, let's rate him a 9 on the Ghidorah Kick-Assery scale. But is he the most powerful? Well, let's move on to the next iteration of Monster Zero and find out. The Heisei era truly began with Godzilla vs Biollante, though we tend to bundle Return of Godzilla in there as well, since it was the first to signify a massive shift in how Godzilla movies are made and presented. This brought over new effects, better animatronics, more detailed sets, and higher budgets, but did it do anything for King Ghidorah? Well, Ghidorah returned in, you guessed it, Godzilla vs King Ghidorah, and his origin is a bit confusing. This Ghidorah is actually a mutant formed by combining three genetically engineered creatures called Dorats on a Pacific island called Lagos in 1944. The Dorats were created by future humans called Futurians, with the intention of mutating them together and forming a giant monster, just like how Godzilla was created. They did this with the intention of destroying Japan, since in the future, Japan would become a corrupt global superpower, even with Godzilla still in their timeline. So, did their complex plan pay off? Did it make the most powerful iteration of Ghidorah? Well, again we have the signature gravity beams, this time being much more powerful, causing far more explosions within the target blast radius. This makes Showa Ghidorah's gravity beams look more like a tickle ray in comparison. Ghidorah also uses his wings to actually block Godzilla's incoming atomic breath, which was previously impossible in the Showa series, which means he has some sort of thick armor in the wing's membrane, which we can only assume would cause more gale force winds as there's more weight and strength to the wing's thrashes, which would prove to be more destructive for the cities below, though the wings appear to have a weak point underneath as they are effortlessly destroyed by Godzilla as he flies away. Ghidorah is again much bigger than Godzilla, standing at 150 meters tall and weighing 70,000 tons, which overshadows Godzilla's height of 80 meters. But outside of armored wings and stronger gravity beams, this iteration really doesn't hold its own and gets defeated by a single monster, leaving Godzilla with barely a scratch. So for Heisei Ghidorah, we're going to have to put him as 6 on the Ghidorah Scale. But there's one catch to the Heisei Ghidorah which leaves this question unanswered. This is where things get interesting. You take a monster and combine mechanical elements to it. Visually, Mecha King Ghidorah has the same build, except now has mechanical wings, shins, and middle head, which was decapitated by Godzilla in their previous encounter. The Futurians designed Mecha King Ghidorah in the 23rd century and claimed to use it in order to defend Japan from incoming Godzilla attacks. But is it more powerful? The gravity beams again seem to be more powerful and manage to suppress Godzilla quite a bit. His wings don't seem to be used for flying anymore and could very well merely be used for steering and gliding, as Ghidorah is now powered by some sort of jet propulsion system. Though the wings are very easily destroyed and penetrated by Godzilla's atomic breath, far easier than the biological counterparts. The biggest differences are that Mecha King Ghidorah has the ability to trap and capture Godzilla, using a giant claw that protrudes from its chest so he can be transported to other areas safely. Although they seem to have forgotten how powerful Godzilla's atomic breath really is, since he managed to destroy Mecha King Ghidorah mid-flight, proving the materials used weren't nearly enough to protect itself. Another power that's not nearly explored is time travel, since Mecha King Ghidorah did come from 300 years in the future. If it somehow had the ability to transport Godzilla or other monsters into a different time period, now that would be impressive. However, this is never demonstrated, so we're left to assume it's impossible to do. All of this considered, Heisei Ghidorah pales in comparison to the achievements of Showa Ghidorah, since he was defeated far too easily by one monster, and even advanced mechanical enhancements couldn't improve his fighting ability. So for that reason, we're going to put Mecha King Ghidorah at 7 on the King Ghidorah scale. Now this one's cheating a bit because we're going outside the Godzilla series. This one will be a bit harder to compare since there's no Godzilla to act as a baseline to size up Ghidorah's powers, but it's still technically an iteration or at least a relative of Ghidorah, so let's give it a shot. Death Ghidorah, also known as Death Ghidorah, was seen in Rebirth of Mothra. His origin is that millions of years ago he came from Mars and flew to Earth with the intention of destroying it. He was met with retaliation from a species of enormous moths, which protected a race of advanced tiny human-like beings called the Elias that inhabited the planet. The battle was fought for a long time and nearly decimated the entire Elias civilization, and left only one final guardian named Mothra remaining. Death Ghidorah was defeated and locked in a chamber so he couldn't harm anyone again. However, in 1996, Death Ghidorah was accidentally set free from his tomb and began his reign of destruction once again. So let's take a look at some of this iteration's powers. Death Ghidorah has 2 different projectile-based attacks, one being the ability to spit fire from its middle head. This attack is called Hell's Flame. This is the most powerful ranged attack, though it has a much closer range of attack when compared to the gravity beams. Though the other attack is called Lava Gout Energy Bolts, which is similar to gravity beams, having a similar range and fire rates. Death Ghidorah can unleash a shockwave pulse that would shake the very ground that it stood and would deliver a suppressing bolt of energy. This version of Ghidorah also has vampiric traits, being able to suck the life force of other monsters and even the surroundings, and can even affect the very environment it drains by unleashing an attack called Fiery Road, which causes the land to split open and release flames from the center of the earth, as if it was Satan itself. We'll see similar vampiric traits used once again in the future, but we'll get back to that later. Overall, this version of Ghidorah is indeed very powerful, and in the end he wasn't actually killed and merely locked back up in its tomb, but whether it would have been the same outcome if it was against Godzilla himself is up for debate. Death Ghidorah by far has the most abilities, which is an advantage in combat, and is also the fastest of the Ghidorahs. Similarly to Showa Ghidorah, Death Ghidorah also can decimate an entire planet, but instead of Venus, it's Mars, though it's unclear whether it once housed an advanced civilization or if it was simply inhabited by small carbon-based life forms. So for the reasons listed, we're going to give Death Ghidorah an 8 out of 10 on the Ghidorah Scale.
Come with me, and you'll be in a world of pure imagination. Take a look, and you'll see into your imagination. We'll begin with a spin, traveling in the world of my creation. What we'll see will defy explanation.
In the millennium, we saw a huge shift in how King Ghidorah is approached. Throughout the years, Ghidorah has remained relatively similar, an antagonist to the Guardian monsters. However, for the film, Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah Giant Monsters All-Out Attack, Ghidorah was revived and turned into a Guardian of the Sky. With a height of 50 meters, wingspan of 93 meters, and a weight of 20,000 metric tons, this is the smallest version of Ghidorah to date, and actually smaller than Godzilla in the same film, which stands at 60 meters tall. This iteration of Ghidorah has a lot in common with the Showa Ghidorah in terms of its powers, though the origin is very different. Originally being an 8-headed dragon from Japanese mythology, originally this King Ghidorah was slain by Japanese warriors thousands of years ago and laid to rest under Mount Fuji, though over the course of a few centuries would be able to revive itself, though was unable to regrow the rest of its heads in time, leaving it with only 3. This iteration isn't quite as durable as previous entries and is knocked out multiple times with only Godzilla's atomic breath. Strangely, Ghidorah himself doesn't have the ability to use gravity beams and instead has an electrical bite, which means he has to get into close range to some potentially dangerous targets. However, once Mothra is killed and he absorbs her power, then the gravity beams return, but seem to have a more electric element to them, being more focused and not quite as strong as Heisei's or even Death Ghidorah's ranged abilities. Also, after absorbing Mothra's energy, he gains an energy shield, which manages to increase his durability and deflect Godzilla's atomic breath. We'll include this in the rating since we see it demonstrated in the films, though it should be noted that it took another Guardian's assistance to reach full power. This Ghidorah has a complex origin but is overall not very durable, unless it receives a power-up. It has fairly simple powers, and the fact it was able to be taken down by mankind leaves it being one of the smallest and weakest of the Ghidorahs. So for that reason, we're going to give GMK Ghidorah a 4 out of 10. Fun fact, Ghidorah in GMK was originally going to be Varan, but Toho decided to change it to King Ghidorah last minute to increase marquee value. Now let's move on to the next iteration of King Ghidorah. We're into big boy territory now. We have Kaiser Ghidorah, seen exclusively in Godzilla Final Wars from 2004. The origin of this goes back to Alien Origins, as Kaiser Ghidorah transforms from an extraterrestrial kaiju named Monster X, a bipedal creature with armored skin, a split tail, and 2 half skulls on its shoulder. Once transformed, Kaiser Ghidorah has some notable differences from the traditional King Ghidorah. First, the skin is smooth with blue streaks. He has 4 legs this time, with spikes protruding from various areas. His wings were notably smaller, but yet it said he can still fly, though it's not demonstrated in the film. Kaiser Ghidorah is slow like a tank, but extremely powerful, with easily the most powerful and versatile ranged weapon to date. The gravity beams return, but here they actually represent their name correctly. The beams can bend and twist and actually lift up other monsters with seemingly little effort. He throws and thrashes Godzilla around and seriously incapacitates him. In a one-on-one standoff with each other's ranged attacks, the gravity beams massively overpower Godzilla's atomic breath. The vampiric properties to Ghidorah return, as you can see energy being visibly drained from Godzilla through each of Kaiser Ghidorah's heads. This iteration of Ghidorah is also very durable and is the only monster in the film, Godzilla Final Wars, that survives getting blasted in the face at point-blank range by Godzilla's atomic breath. Kaiser Ghidorah travelled to Earth in a large meteorite, so presumably this is how the kaiju travels, which harks back to how Showa Ghidorah travels from planet to planet. This version of Ghidorah is incredibly powerful and is the only one to nearly kill Godzilla by draining all his energy. The only reason Godzilla survives and eventually wins is thanks to the humans' help. Though since this iteration isn't outfitted with tons of powers, that would come to its advantage in situations similarly to how it was killed, then we can't rate it higher than Showa Ghidorah. So for that reason we're going to give Kaiser Ghidorah an 8 out of 10. I don't have that much to say about this version of Ghidorah because it's so drastically different, but it technically still is Ghidorah, and it is an interesting concept, so let's throw it in here. Anime Ghidorah showed up in the 2018 anime film Godzilla the Planet Eater. This version of Ghidorah inhabits the void between dimensions, and is treated as a god by the Exif, a race of aliens whose home planet was consumed by Ghidorah. They've since set out on a journey to feed it other planets to appease it. It has various cosmic abilities such as supergravity, a strong gravitational field that can be summoned by Ghidorah, and that force collapses and completely crushes anything within its vicinity. This power is demonstrated when he completely demolishes the Adatrum, a human interstellar vessel. This version of Ghidorah is made completely out of energy and isn't a carbon-based lifeform. Because of this, he has the ability to pass between dimensions, through wormholes that are summoned by cultists. This energy can be summoned in various different ways, once appearing as shadows which devours dozens of humans in the real world. He is undetectable by human instruments, thanks to being able to alter space-time itself. This leads to various anomalies like being able to show completely different data on human devices, being able to remotely steer the Aratrum's controls, and changing the space of time from 2 different locations, such as when the crew on the bridge of the Adatrum receive a transmission from the engine room even though it was destroyed 40 seconds earlier. Like Kaiser Ghidorah, the Planet Eater has the ability to drain Godzilla's energy, but also like GMK Ghidorah, is able to send strong electric shocks through Godzilla. Godzilla is also unable to attack Anime Ghidorah due to the fact he isn't made up of physical matter. Though the Planet Eater does have one main weakness, and that he has to be summoned and guided with a ritual. Metphis, one of the Exif that worships Ghidorah, has an item called the Gabitrium Bead, which allows Ghidorah to see in that reality. When the lead character, Haruo, destroys the bead, it leaves Ghidorah vulnerable, leaving him unable to see and now a physical form. This gives Godzilla a chance to use his atomic breath attack, which completely obliterates Ghidorah and the portals in which he came from, though it's presumed the essence of Ghidorah remains alive in another dimension. It's all very complicated, I know. This is a bit of a weird one to rate because it's very blatantly overpowered, in the fact that it's completely undetectable and can't be attacked, all whilst it completely devours the planet, though it has a pretty silly weakness that seems like it can be easily prevented, though the series was mainly opening up discussion on religious fanaticism than being about the monster brawls. So for the Planet Eater, I'm gonna give it a... If you don't want light spoilers for King of the Monsters, then click away now, but otherwise, let's carry on. Bear in mind we can only go off what we've seen so far, and there's stuff we have yet to learn about legendary Ghidorah, so a lot of it is based on observation, but we're going to involve it nonetheless. But remember, what we know might change in the future. This version of King Ghidorah has kicked it up a notch, with far more destructive close to medium range attacks. This design stays true to the originals and looks more like a mix between Showa and Heisei, with obviously a couple upgrades to look more realistic. He appears to walk using his wings as support, and when in a standoff will raise them to intimidate the enemy, as a way of making himself look far bigger, which is a trait found in real life animals. He retains the classic gold scaly skin and has now bent dinosaur-like legs, which is a welcome change over the logs we've seen in the previous series. In terms of powers, legendary Ghidorah can not only just decimate cities with the hurricanes created from the thrust of his wings, but his wings also have the ability to summon entire storms around him, with lightning bolts blasting out of the sky with a range of several dozen miles to potentially hundreds. In a recent clip, it's also revealed that he can shoot gravity beams right from his wings, or at least summon lightning in the clouds as a way to deter Godzilla in combat. It's this elemental control that will make Ghidorah seem like a true god of the sky. What I love about this version of Ghidorah is that each of the tails is different. One of the two tails is actually a retractable scythe, and the other is a club, kind of like an Ankylosaurus. This kind of versatility really gives legendary Ghidorah an advantage in close combat and can vary up its tactics depending on the situation. This is a really neat addition to Ghidorah's overall makeup. The gravity beams are of course returning and will likely have similar attributes to the Heisei version, being a focused beam of gravitational energy that will be an advantage in certain situations and aid Ghidorah in decimating the cityscape. We can only assume on the durability since we haven't seen much of the combat yet, but reports say he's incredibly agile and able to dodge Godzilla's atomic breath. So even if it's not the most durable, he'll make up for it in speed and agility. This agility, coupled with its immense size of 160 meters, which makes legendary Ghidorah the biggest in the franchise, gives us a foe that will certainly give Godzilla a run for his money. It's the fact that this titan can actually manipulate the environment like a god that truly gives this Ghidorah a heightened advantage when compared to most other iterations, and it truly earns the name King Ghidorah. Godzilla seems to have a great rage for Ghidorah since they've met before thousands of years ago, and potentially even earlier, and it's the fact it's going to take multiple monsters to be able to take Ghidorah down, destroy all monsters style. And for that reason we're going to give legendary Ghidorah a 9 out of 10, but this could change when the movie comes out, and we'll see more of Ghidorah. This leaves us with one final question: which is the most powerful Ghidorah? Showa, Heisei, GMK, Death Ghidorah, Kaiser Ghidorah, or legendary Ghidorah? Well, if we consult the list, we can see that in terms of power, GMK Ghidorah falls completely flat due to the amount of times he's defeated in one film, and the lack of a powerful ability. Heisei Ghidorah and Mecha King Ghidorah are more powerful, but are also defeated fairly easily by only one monster. Death Ghidorah and Kaiser Ghidorah are on the same level and are both incredibly powerful, and can flatten entire civilizations, but ultimately have their weaknesses. Showa Ghidorah and Legendary Ghidorah are also on the same level, and both have an incredible ability to destroy. And with Showa Ghidorah completely wiping out an advanced race of aliens on the planet of Venus, gives it a massive advantage, whilst Legendary Ghidorah has a much more destructive mid-range attack, and elemental powers that outdo any of the previous iterations of this character. But since King of the Monsters isn't out yet, and we haven't gotten a glimpse of the extent of his powers, we're gonna have to give the #1 spot to Showa King Ghidorah, since it took so many monsters coming together at one time to take it down. I'm super excited to finally see King Ghidorah truly represented as the super powerful titan he's been claimed to be. We'll truly be able to see what King Ghidorah can do on the big screen, thanks to advancements in visual effects throughout the years. King of the Monsters releases next month, and Jacob and I cannot wait much longer. But for now, Showa Ghidorah holds the crown as most powerful version of this iconic three-headed dragon. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like, and maybe we'll make a video comparing other classic monsters throughout the years. Don't forget to hit subscribe to keep up to date on everything Godzilla, and comment down below what comparison you'd like to see next. I've been Alistair from DangerVille, and residents, we'll see you in the next one.